Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlipp. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. Well, boys and girls, it is officially game day. This is either going to be the best day of the year or the worst day of the year. Not to overstate things or anything. Hate to be hyperbolic, but, why don't we run through some of the updates, news and notes stuff, get that out of the way quickly, because, again, it's game day. I'm not going to go through all the different coaching things. There's just too many, and it's not of interest today, but I did think it was kind of funny. Apparently, the Falcons are going to interview Matt Ryan for the position of president of football. It kind of made news when that came out to begin with, that was a position that they were creating, and now they're saying that they believe that the position was created for Matt Ryan. So, weird. In addition to that, the Lions scheduled an interview for their offensive coordinator job with Seahawks passing game coordinator Jake Peetz, so we'll keep an eye on that. And as for our own house, Jeff Hafley is on the board with a couple different teams. 3 teams have requested interviews with the Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley for head coaching positions: the Atlanta Falcons, the Arizona Cardinals, and the Tennessee Titans. This kind of parlays into some other news, and that is, surprisingly, the deal is already done, and John Eric Sullivan, Green Bay Packers front office guy, is gone. Miami has hired him to be their new GM. So, again, it was felt like it was a done deal last year, didn't end up happening, and so it seems as though he was at the top of the list, and the Dolphins felt they needed to pounce quickly while they had the opportunity. This now adds to a long list of people from the Ron Wolf, Ted Thompson tree, including Elliott Wolf, who is currently with the Patriots, Brian Gutekunst, which is our GM, obviously, John Dorsey, Reggie McKenzie, John Schneider, lots and lots of guys. The question, though, then becomes, I mentioned that this kind of parlays with the coaching conversation, not just because it's a matter of possibly losing people, but the question of, does this mean that the likelihood of Jeff Hafley getting hired away goes up because Miami is also now looking for a head coach? Is it possible that John Eric Sullivan is going to go all in on making sure that Jeff Hafley gets hired? I guess maybe another way to put it is, does this set a floor? That is to say, if he doesn't get hired anywhere else, Miami will hire him. You know what I mean? Does this kind of guarantee that he's gone? That might be a bit of a reach, but obviously a lot of people are going to be looking into him, and it's possible that John Eric Sullivan would not, necessarily let him pass by. Now, that all depends. I mean, there may be other better candidates, but how many of those are going to go to Miami? For some reason, it seems as though the Giants are a very coveted job right now. Everybody's talking about that. Hafley wants to go there as well, but it sounds like there's going to be possibly some other people there. Either way, it does increase the likelihood, at least to some degree, that Hafley has a job after this season. There's also questions about, could that be the location of Malik Willis? Could we see John Eric Sullivan, Jeff Hafley, and Malik Willis all going to Miami? Maybe this is all overreaction, but this is the conversation I'm immediately seeing crop up on social media, and it does make some sense. And then there's another interesting question. With the potential departure of Jeff Hafley, does that open the door again for a conversation that seemed like it was long in the rearview mirror, but is probably going to reemerge front and center if the timing works out? That is to say, Jeff Hafley is hired away, and this person is still making the rounds, and that's Jim Leonhard. That was a big topic of conversation in the past when he was at Wisconsin, incredibly successful, really big name. Packers wanted him. He was their top choice. I think it was over Joe Barry, or was it Pettin at the time? I can't even remember how far back that went. It was either Pettin or Joe Barry, and he ended up staying in Wisconsin, I believe it was. He decided he wanted to stay, so we hired somebody else. Very shortly thereafter, the Badgers move in a new direction. He ends up losing his job, et cetera, et cetera. But he did end up going back to the Denver Broncos as an assistant head coach and defensive pass game coordinator, which is not a small title. In fact, he's already making the rounds. The Cowboys are interviewing Broncos, that thing, Jim Leonhard for defensive coordinator vacancy. So he's already making the rounds. Now, there was some talk about how, I remember, I don't even remember the details. I just know I looked into it and I thought, I don't love this. The only thing that really makes me want to, you got to remember too, what he did in Wisconsin isn't necessarily the same thing he would do in the NFL. He's also learned from a lot of different people, including being now with the Denver Broncos. I'm sure he learned a ton there. But I just think about, for example, his specific style and with Wisconsin. Now, that would potentially mean we go back to a 3-4, which could end up being somewhat confusing. Although, if we keep Rashawn Gary, there's a question to be had about could that benefit him? It seems like he, it's been kind of a slow decline since before. It probably is more injury related, but you wonder, could that help him? But the biggest thing that it's got me thinking about is Micah Parsons. Could Jim Leonhard be kind of a wizard when it comes to these sort of blitzing packages, the mugging the linebacker? It's stuff like we see in Minnesota, but then you've got this extra added piece of Micah Parsons, because that was a big part of what they did in Wisconsin. And I had said at the time, you can't really do that in the pros. That's not really a thing where you have the inside and outside linebackers that are so interchangeable. You can pull that off in college, because you can have linebackers inside and outside that are all like 240 pounds, and it'll work. Then you can blitz the inside guys, you can drop the outside guys. You can't do that in the pros because there's no 240-pound edge rushers. However, when you talk Micah Parsons, that's a different animal. This is now a guy that can do all those things. And we even saw Jeff Hafley dropping him in coverage, which, again, you don't necessarily love that, but it worked so unbelievably well that we've got, we're forcing like 3-on-1s against people that should not be having 3-on-1s because they're so worried about Micah, as Micah does a fantastic job dropping into coverage because he's so unbelievably fast. And then you've got a bunch of other guys that are uncovered or single covered at least. So it's at least worth revisiting Jim Leonhard and his style and all that kind of stuff now that we have a little bit different personnel. And even if I don't want to, that conversation is going to go straight to the top. Again, assuming we actually lose Hafley and Leonhard is still available, that will absolutely go straight to the top of the conversation. All right, moving on to this particular game. Dontavian Wicks, unfortunately, was dropped. His designation dropped down to out. He is out because of the concussion thing. I'm seeing a lot of like, oh, here comes Matthew Golden. I don't see any reason why that changes Matthew Golden. This game was never going to be about Wicks. Not to say Wicks couldn't help us, but Wicks was never going to have a major role in this. So even if we're saying Golden is taking Wicks's role of wide receiver 4, which Golden probably already was anyways, I don't see how that makes a huge difference. This game is going to be about the top 3 wide receivers that are still in the game, primarily. Again, wouldn't be opposed if we got some stuff dialed up for Golden here, but I don't see why the Wicks thing, other than because we want it to be a thing, I don't see why the Wicks thing means automatically, oh boy, big game for Golden incoming. That doesn't make any sense to me. There's also been a ton of weather hysteria in this game. We talked about this already before, where there was a message that came up like, oh, it's going to be these crazy things. And I went and looked, and it was like, it doesn't look like it. I saw this morning from Sportskeeda. It says, a significant and dangerous winter storm is poised to impact the Chicago area on Saturday, coinciding with the NFC wildcard playoff game between the Chicago Bears and Green Bay Packers at Soldier Field. Beneath that, it says the National Weather Service has issued a winter storm watch for the region, in effect from late Friday through Saturday evening. Forecasters are predicting heavy snowfall accompanied by strong winds gusting between 35 and 45 miles per hour. The primary concern is the combination of bitter cold and high winds, which could create life-threatening wind chills as low as -10 to -30 degrees during the game window. And my thought was, wow, things must have changed drastically. So I started digging around. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And I found a Chicago National Weather Service post from around the same time. Here's what it says. Wintry weather will return on Saturday as a storm system affects the region. A period of steady precipitation in the morning in the form of wet snow and some rain may result in localized slushy accumulation. There may be some non-accumulating snow showers or flurries during the afternoon, followed by wind-whipped snow showers Saturday evening and overnight that may put down localized coatings of snow and cause brief poor visibility. And I thought, okay, well, that's not super scary sounding, and that was from where they said this came from, so I don't fully understand. And so I started digging around, and I look at AccuWeather. And so I'm looking at the what they're saying we're looking at for that day. We're apparently looking at about 32 degrees with little to no precipitation. The wind gusts are not between 35 and 45 miles an hour, but up to 29 miles per hour. And the real feel, the wind chill, is not, what did it say, negative what? Negative 30? No, it says real feel 17 degrees. I don't know why everyone keeps doing this. I don't know if it's because they want it to be true. I don't know if they've got some weird, crazy source somewhere. I don't know what everybody's looking at for this like elite, horrifying, like storm of the century, snow that could be 4 feet, 10 feet tall and 30 below zero and 45 mile an hour winds. Bro, this is a mild day. It's been pretty nice out lately. 32 degrees. Yes, the wind gusts. I mean, for the record, those are the gusts. We're talking 15 miles per hour are the winds. Okay, which is relatively windy. It's not anything crazy, but it's a little bit windy. It's relatively warm, and there's little to no precipitation. Can we freaking calm down? I mean, this report from Sportskeeda is just made up. I don't know where they got this from. A significant? No. Dangerous winter storm? No. Poised to impact Chicago? No. The National Weather Service issued a winter storm watch? Maybe. I haven't found. Forecasters predicting heavy snowfall? No. Accompanied by strong winds gusting between 35 and 45 miles per hour? No. Life-threatening wind chills? As low as -10 to -30? No. Like, none of this is real. I don't know what you're talking about. Again, maybe this ends up changing. Maybe the storm, it's one of those things where it's like it's a lower percentage, but if this collides with this and the like one of those movies where the three storms collide into one and something maybe, but nobody is predicting that right now. Nobody is saying that. I'm not seeing that anywhere. Weather alert. Large winter storm is expected to hit near Chicago area, and there is expected to be snow. Expected to feel like 9 degrees with gusts of up to 39 miles an hour. First of all, exaggerate. Second of all, okay. 9 degrees in January, isn't that crazy? Good old Dove climbing. A large snow, all caps, as though snow is like some kind of a like earthquake or something. A large snowstorm is expected to hit near Chicago area for the Bears-Packers wild card game. No. What's hilarious is he actually takes a screenshot and posts it below. That contradicts his entire post. What a freaking idiot. Anyways, let's take a break here. When we come back, the last thing I want to look at is the referees, the updates on the reffing crew. So we'll take a we'll take a look at that when we get back. We'll be right back. All right, this comes via NFL Ref Stats over on X. NFL Ref Stats 1 is his handle, if you want to go follow him. He hand-delivered this to me today, so I'm appreciative of him for that, if you wouldn't mind going and following him. Here's what he has to say. Green Bay versus Chicago officiating crew cheat sheet. Head referee Adrian Hill will be joined by 3 officials from John Hussey's crew for the Wild Card Weekend game, 1 apiece from Rolstad and Vinovich's crew. Divisional home teams are 15 and 16 in Adrian Hill's career, so that's coin flip, doesn't really mean a ton. This will be the Bears' 3rd game with Hill this season. Previous wins in Week 4 Raiders, Week 10 versus the New York Giants. The Adrian Hill and John Hussey crews call a disproportionate percentage of the overall penalties via offensive holding / false start at 43% and 43.5% respectively. The NFL average is 38.4%. In raw numbers, Adrian Hill's crew ranks number 1 in 2025 calling offensive holding penalties per game on average. Hill's crew assessed a league-leading 59% of third down penalties on the offense. I'm expecting a chippy game, and the Hussey crew members are historically predisposed to calling discipline-related infractions, taunting, unsportsmanlike conduct, etc., at higher rates than most. Add in the primetime angle with traditionally elevated penalties via unnecessary roughness, and both teams need to be mindful of avoiding self-inflicted penalties for extracurricular activities post-play. Adrian Hill is 19-11-1, 64% under the total in his career divisional games. Hill was an NFL-leading 10-4 under in 2025. Those are some key notes, and whoever can navigate the offensive holding minefield will have a big advantage Saturday night. I like Green Bay in first game, and I like Chicago in the rematch. The reality is Green Bay led the majority of the 2 games, and it took a Houdini-like escape for Chicago to win in overtime Soldier Field in December. On Wild Card Weekend, no team is a bigger wild card than Green Bay, in my opinion. Not sure what to expect from them, and if they bring their A game offensively, Chicago is in trouble. That's a big if, though. Currently a pick and 46 at the total. I lean Bears at home with what should be another down-to-the-wire classic game. Prediction, Bears 23, Packers 20. Appreciate Mr. NFL ref stats. Okie doke. So I was thinking about this today as I was kind of just waltzing around the house. You know, and it for some reason still has not hit me yet, and I don't know why, but by tomorrow, which it's still Friday for me right now, I'm sure I'll be a freaking wreck, but this game is kind of like 2 major things are colliding. One of them is that it's a playoff game. Kind of self-explanatory what that means. There's higher stakes here. The anxiety that a lot of us are feeling is probably less about, boy, oh boy, are we going to win the Super Bowl, and more about, please don't let this be the end. Unfortunately, that's the exact kind of attitude we all need to hope and pray the Green Bay Packers do not have going into this. It's the kind of attitude that is very unfortunate. And part of it is because of injuries, obviously. I'm sure there are a lot of people that would feel much more optimistic if we had a lot of other people that are not on IR playing in this game. But again, that is kind of the issue. The issue that nobody seems to actually believe that this is really worth anything, that this isn't a legitimate playoff attempt. And it's understandable why that is, outside of the injuries. We've spent the better part of a month talking about, number 1, injuries, talking about a 4-game losing streak, feeling the defeat and letting that sink into our soul, talking about which people will be fired. Should the GM be fired? Should the coach be fired? Should the coaches be fired? Which players should be cut because they're bad, because they're not good enough, nothing's good enough, and everybody should be fired? This is what we're talking about going into the playoffs. This is a big game, not just because it's a playoff game, because honestly, the way that we act, who cares? Who really cares other than, please don't let us lose to the Bears in the playoffs? What does it matter? What matters is the attitude itself. What matters is the fact that it's different for us. For the Packers and Bears, these are 2 different things. It's the same game being played in the same stadium with the same 2 teams in the same year, month, day, same objective. Everything is the same, but it's not the same. This isn't hope for the future. And this also shouldn't just be, oh, ho-hum, another year in the playoffs. This is about representing the identity of Titletown. It's not the fact that we're in the playoffs. It's why we are once again in the playoffs, because it's who we are and it's what we do. But we need to get over this hump. We need to get over this hump of this emotional negativity and everything else, but also this hump of just nobody having any feeling of hope, period, that the Packers will ever be able to do anything in the playoffs ever. We need to get over this feeling of, yeah, we're a good regular season team, but in the playoffs, we're nothing. At some point, this team has to break through that. At some point, there needs to be some invigoration, if that's a thing. This needs to be more than just a game that we really don't want to lose. It needs to be a game that we win. But not just win. We need to win in convincing fashion, similar, by the way, to what happened in Dallas. Dallas is exactly, and I'm not just saying I want you to just do the most insanely inhuman thing in the world. No, I want you to send a message. Because if you remember, we went into Dallas as massive underdogs. We had no chance. We were going to get smoked. It was game over. Because they were the quarterback with the MVP level quarterback. They were the team that was just unstoppable, especially at home. They were this dynamo. And the Packers were kind of eh. And the Packers went in and showed that, first of all, you're an idiot. Second of all, elaborating on that, this is our house. I know you think you're in your house, but the playoffs are what we do. This is what we do. Now is when we get to work. And they showed that they were by far the better team, that they did deserve to be there, and that they should be talked about as Super Bowl contenders. And you know what? They accomplished that. But unfortunately, the very next game that they played, they fell apart. So, okay, run it back. Here we go again. We're going into this game, by the way, not massive underdogs, but we're going into this game on the road, and most people feel as though it's a battle of which team is lesser of a legitimate playoff contender. There needs to be a demonstration that at the end of the day, I don't give a crap who's hurt. This is the Green Bay Packers. This is what we do, and we're going to come in here and we're going to show you what we do. This is not your first rodeo. Even as a young team, this is not your first rodeo. Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love, you guys, this is your house. I don't care what stadium you're in. This is your arena. And part two of those two things coming together, although very similar, is the fact that it's not just a playoff game, it is a game against the Bears. And it feels daunting. And it's upsetting because the Bears won the division and we didn't. In fact, we haven't won the division, I don't think, the last 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm sure a lot of people would look down their nose at that. I'm sure the Bears are very proud of themselves and everything that they've accomplished. Here's what I would say to that. Yes, the Packers need to do a better job. They need to reclaim the top spot in the division. But at the end of the day, the Chicago Bears right now are visitors. With other teams like the Bears, like the Lions, like the Vikings, these moments are fleeting. You won the division. Congratulations. The last time you did that was 2018, and who knows when the last time before that was. The Bears have won the division, just like the Lions won the division in 2024, just like the Vikings won the division in 2022. There's a bigger picture here, though, than the fact that one of these teams over the last several years has found a way to rise up above us. How about what happened to between 2018 and now for the Chicago Bears? What happened to the Vikings after 2022? What happened to the Lions after 2024? Oh, did they crash and burn to bottom in the division and miss the playoffs? I think they did. Because at the end of the day, whether it's number 1 in the division, 2 in the division, whatever it is, we were 3 in the division, last year, but we were an 11-win football team. At the end of the day, if we're being very serious about this, we talk about these windows, right? Oh, you got to get in there because there's a window. And I've talked about it before. There's always seems to be a window, but it always seems to just go on forever. You know why? Because the Bears have windows. The Bears, you look at it, it's like, oh, the Bears have all this time in front of them. No, they don't. That's what we thought about the Lions, and look at them now. The Bears have windows. The Vikings have windows. The Lions have windows, and if they don't get what they need to get in those windows, then it's done. And who knows for how long? It could be for generations. The Packers don't have windows. We have eras. They have these cute little runs. And yeah, they get to talk a lot of trash because you know what? They won the division. Congratulations. You won the division. That's nice. You're a visitor to the playoffs. You had your moment. You had your successful run. You had your run of luck, just like the Vikings in 2022. Congratulations. That's wonderful. You don't have an organization, though. You don't have an owner or a president or a GM that can lead you anywhere. You don't seem to have a quarterback, at least at this point. Again, are there steps being taken? Minor steps, yes. But outside of the highlight throws, which is the same thing they did with Justin Fields, oh, he's bad, then look at this highlight throw. Aside from that, if you look at the down to down, he's still one of the least accurate passers in the entire NFL. So I don't know if you have any of that. In fact, I don't know that you have a coach. It seems to be going pretty well with the coach, but I don't know. You are a visitor here, and you get to have your little bit of fun. You get to make your little bit of noise, and this will be completely forgotten in a year, maybe 2 or 3, but most likely by next year, this will all be forgotten. And it will be a question of which team will be battling the Packers, because that's always the question. Again, the Packers haven't finished at the top, but it's always a question of who's battling the Packers. Is it us and the Bears? Is it us and the Vikings? Is it us and the Lions? Who's it going to be? But right now, the Packers are in the era of Jordan Love. And similar to how they need to send a message to themselves, to the league, whatever, that they are a playoff team, that they are the title town Green Bay Packers, that they belong in the postseason, that they are a legitimate Super Bowl contender, they also need to demonstrate and send the message to the Chicago Bears that this isn't for you. I'm glad you had your fun. Your fun is over. Yes, you get the title of number one in the division. You get to hang the banner, all that stuff. You're not on this level. You don't know what you're doing. You're never going to be at this level. This level of organizational success, this level of organizational efficiency, knowing what to do, when to do it, how to do it, you don't know any of that. You're winging it. You went out and spent a bunch of money for Ben Johnson, and you're just throwing crap at the wall. You went out and got like 4 receivers in the last however many years through free agency and the draft. You spent $1 billion on this offensive line, most of which is going to be gone very soon because they're 30-something plus years old, which is like half of your roster because you went out and just spent a bunch of money in free agency, which again, once you're successful, the money goes away, the early draft picks go away. Remember, they've had number one pick in the NFL draft 2 years in a row. Okay? So no, I'm not massively impressed with a team that's had the number one pick 2 years in a row and has had the most salary cap space of any team. Congratulations on making the playoffs thanks to a fluky run of interceptions by your defense. Congratulations. This is your window. This is your moment. And again, it is time for Jordan Love, Matt LaFleur, and the Green Bay Packers to carry that level of pride with them into Chicago and demonstrate to them who they are. And by they, I mean both the Green Bay Packers and the Chicago Bears. Who you are and who they are. That needs to be very clear by the time the clock strikes 0. Pack up your crap and get the hell out of our playoffs. See you again in 7 years. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll take some calls, and then we'll get out of here. We'll be right back. All right, we got a bunch of calls. I want to try to get as caught up as we possibly can, so I want to hit that here and now. In fact, I might start from the end today and then do Pack and After, because in hopes that this is a little bit more hypey. Before we do that, though, just a reminder, if you can, head over to Packers.com, find where they have the fan voting for Green Bay Packers, Fan of the Year? And I'm asking people if they could please vote for Dean Schmitz of Wausau, friend of the program. Not a personal friend of mine, but through the podcast. It'd be a great way to show some support to some fellow friends of ours. Speaking of, patreon.com/Pack_Daddy. If you'd like to support the podcast, please, 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 please do so for as little as $1 a month. If you got $1, please do it. Not just for the sake of I would like $1, which would be great. I would love it if you could join me this Saturday, today, for the live stream. Okay? I'm going to be pumping out. I still got people messaging me, I don't see anything. When are you going to send out links or whatever? If you're on Patreon, you should be getting emails. If you're on X following me, you should see a link. If you're in the Packernet Facebook group, you should see a link. If you don't, go look. It should be there. It will be there. I don't know how else to get it to you, but I really would love as many possible people in there as we can. It'll be me and my son hanging out with you guys. This is only the third stream. I feel stupid for not having done this all year. But here we are. And as much as I hope this isn't the case, this may be the last time we get to do this, although there will be more streams. It'll just be probably NFL draft related. Would love it if you could join for the game. I'm going to try to think of more things. I've been adding more and more things to pop up just so it's not a lot of dead air. But having you guys there helps, by the way, with the comments section, so there's not as much dead air. But as many people as we possibly can. There's a lot of people already subscribing. For those of you that do, please join us. For those of you that have not, again, it's just $1. There is nothing in life you're going to get for a single dollar, all right? Please and thank you. All right, why don't we get started? Again, I think we'll go top down here, so let's get started with Drew in Green Bay.
Hey, Ryan, it's Drew from Green Bay.
What's up, dude?
Just wanted to call in. I know it's a little late, but I did want to say, one thing you said before Week 18 is that the worst case scenario is we play our starters and then lose. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what the Bears did. They played their starters and then they lost. And so I'm not sure the Bears have any more momentum than we have going into the playoffs. And, I think one thing towards the end of the season that people didn't really talk about enough is that we had a really early bye. And I think our guys were kind of getting tired by the end of the season. And so getting that week of rest could rejuvenate a lot of these guys. And, the Bears not getting that week of rest and having a very emotional game. They played horribly and then they started coming back and then there was like a missed field goal or whatever and then a field goal and it just kept going back and forth as a whole game in the fourth quarter. And I just that was a very emotional game for them, for a Week 18 game that really didn't matter for them that much. And there's no team I'd rather play in the playoffs than the Bears, even though they're the 2 seed. I know it sounds like I'm a hater or ridiculous, but it's really the case. And then if we do win, we'll be playing Seattle, and Seattle's a very good team, but even though, Sam Darnold, has been playing well, I think in the end, I would playing Caleb Williams and then potentially Sam Darnold if we get there. I think that is 2 reasonable quarterbacks to be going up against in the playoffs. And so I do think the stars could align in terms of, a 7 seed going on a run. This is not the most difficult lineup I've ever seen for a 7 seed. So Let's get the first Bears game out of the win. We get a win, get that out of the way. Everything after that's pretty much gravy, and maybe we can make a run and see what happens. But at least we get to see some football. And when you get into the playoffs, you make your off season a little bit shorter. But we'll go Pack go.
Yeah, I think you're right about the Bears. I mean, again, remember they are a big momentum team, a big emotion team, and things have not gone well. And you're right. They've been playing all the way through while we got a little bit of rest. And I know people worry about rust, but the wear and tear on guys' bodies is real. And the fact of the matter is, again, I think we were surprised at how good some of our players played against Minnesota. I really think a lot of it is because these are young guys that haven't played all year. They're fresh. They got no injuries. Barron Sorrell's not. I mean, he's got a couple bruises on him, but he's fine, man. He's ready to rock and roll. He's got pent-up energy. So, I think there's probably a tipping point. It's a little bit of a bell curve with, no rest is bad. Obviously that's, if you think about it, we talk about, rest being like automatic in this bad thing because it turns into rust. Well, then why is it so bad when you have a game on Sunday and then a game on Thursday? It's because you have no rest. And it's a good thing if you play a game, Thursday and then you don't play again until Monday because now you have so much rest. Nobody talks about rust in those situations. So why is it if you add 4 days onto that suddenly it's like guaranteed rust. What are you talking about? These guys are all beaten, bruised, and battered, and an extra week. Again, you don't want them just laying on the couch for 2 weeks because that'll freeze you up a little bit. But take this absolute beating out of it. Give them an actual week without getting slammed into, and I think a lot of good things could happen. And again, like you said, the Bears don't have that. They continued playing and they continued their losing streak. So I think that's very correct.
Hey, Back Daddy, it's Garrett from Southern Illinois. As everybody knows by now, news just broke this morning on Friday that Miami signed O'Sullivan to be their new GM.
Yeah.
And I think we all pretty much speculate that Hafley is probably going to be pretty high on his list of coaches. I don't think we can assume anything, but we can speculate that.
Sure.
Knowing Hafley very well, I think he probably has him high on his list. So that could potentially mean that Green Bay could lose Hafley and potentially some very crucial defensive coaches from our staff.
Yeah.
I just hate that news like this breaks a day before the game against the Bears, because I feel like as much as guys are professional and they're worried about tomorrow night's game, can't help but think somebody is not thinking about this a little bit or in their own ways, wondering what's going to happen after the season's over. But just wish it would have maybe been announced after the game. Would have been nice. But anyways, you can always wish for a lot of things. But I think that the writing's on the wall. It just seems very, very high probability that we're going to lose Hafley one way or another. And this just, I think, even bumps up the potential quite a bit. I do wish him all the best, but man, I really wish we could have had some more continuity with this team when it comes to coaches, their coaching style, and the potential of what they can mold this team into. And losing another defensive coordinator this soon into his tenure, this kind of sucks. So I know that, when we were potentially looking for defense coordinators the last time, Hafley wasn't even on our radar, and
right.
He turned out to be pretty good coach for us. But I know there's probably someone out there that can do a pretty good job, but there's someone out there that may not do as good a job as Hafley. So that is the quandary we will face after the season's over.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the points I was going to make is, when we were looking at defensive coordinators, there were 10 different guys that we really, really wanted. Basically, Baltimore's entire staff and some other people. Hafley came out of left field. We're all sitting there going, wait, what? What are you talking about, dude? And then he got here, and we loved the guy. The other part, if we're being honest, and again, he may be staying, and I obviously would be fine with that. We're not rocking, even with Micah Parsons, a top 5 defense. Outside of, those first 2 weeks where it seemed like we were just the greatest defense in the world, it quickly fell apart. And, we can blame the players and all that kind of stuff, but, elite defenses don't have perfect rosters. And they also, many of them don't have Micah Parsons. So, look, if he gets hired away, oh no, we're doomed is rapidly going to turn into, first of all, exactly what I said. Hafley wasn't as good as we all made him out to be. And then number 2 is going to turn into, I'm so excited about X, Y, and Z. Right? I already mentioned one name on this show. There's going to be several more looking at defenses that were far better than ours. Guys that would be ideal for Micah Parsons. That would be the priority. And the bottom line is we'd get very, very excited about it. So I'm not really that worried. I think the point that you made about him poaching other people from the staff worries me a little bit more. It's possible he takes Covington and makes him the defensive coordinator over there. You know what I mean? So we could be losing several people, but at the same time, that would probably be okay because the new DC would probably have his own list of candidates that he'd like to have with him. And then ideally we get to keep like Ansley and some other guys that are, again, pretty high quality coaches to keep some level of continuity. But I'm not as panicked about it as I was in the first several weeks of the season when it was like, holy crap, this defense is so good and we're going to lose them and then everything's going to fall apart. The defense has been okay. Even the Covington thing. I mean, you look at everyone hates Rashawn Gary now and Wyatt. It's basically after like week 9, nobody was getting sacks anymore. Nobody was doing anything outside of Micah Parsons, and everybody was kind of disgruntled about it. And I think that's fair. I mean, when you have Hafley, who's a genius, and Covington, who's a genius, and all these people that are like overqualified geniuses, boy, it would be nice if we were a little better. You know what I mean? We should at least be a top 5 defense before we start really worrying about we can't live without this guy, and we are not. Even before the Micah Parsons injury, we were not a top 5 defense. So I'll get over it.
Hey, what's up, Brian? It's Les. Hey, I'm listening to the pod this morning. Today's Friday. And I actually had to pause it. I had to pause it real quick and check in because the conversation you're having about John Harbaugh, it all kind of makes sense. Everything you said makes sense. All the ties that Ed Policy has, the Harbaugh family and whatnot. But John Harbaugh said that he wanted to wait a week before, he started doing interviews and whatnot. And I just wonder if that's because he's looking at the Packers like, if I had some place to go, I'd rather go to this story franchise with, a young, top 10 QB, a beast of Michael Parsons, this young talent. What coach wouldn't want that, especially a coach like Harbaugh? That is just, a place you'd want to go. So it just made me think. Maybe the Packers are waiting to see what happens with this game. If LaFleur wins the game, it's going to be all right, we're probably not going to fire him. He just won, as an underdog in the playoffs. Kind of be a hard argument. And if you did fire him, you might have had the fan base up in arms. It would just be, I think it would be a bad look for the organization. The media would destroy Ed Policy and Brian Gutekunst, destroy what that happened. But if LaFleur loses, now that's a different story. LaFleur loses, the next day he's out, Harbaugh's in. I honestly can see that happening, man. I don't think it's as far-fetched. As in fact, I don't think anything in the Gutekunst era is far-fetched because we didn't think he would draft a quarterback in 2020. We thought he was going to draft a wide receiver or something, but he was going to draft some weapons for Rodgers, but he drafted Love. We didn't think that he was going to trade for Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs. Who saw that happening? No one did, right? I'm sorry, I said trade. Signed them as free agents. We didn't think that he was going to let Aaron Jones go. And we definitely didn't think that he was going to go after Micah Parsons, right? We thought that he was just making phone calls just because that's what the Packers do. They make phone calls. But I would not be surprised. Nothing in this Gutekunst era would surprise me. So if we lose and LaFleur is out, I 100% am going to say that Harbaugh is in. And Harbaugh will be half the reason why LaFleur was fired this year, and maybe not, next year or the following year, is because somebody like Harbaugh became available. All right, I took, again, almost 3 minutes to say something that I could have said 40 seconds. My apologies.
That's my whole thing here. That's what I do. So the only issue with all that is the more recent reports that came out, and maybe you've seen it now, but his list of demands, I don't know how certain they are, but apparently he wants north of $20 million salary. He wants $10 million in expenditures for his assistants. He wants control over the roster, and he wants to be able to handpick his own GM. I don't see any universe in which the Packers concede to all that. I can't imagine they're like, okay, fine, we're on the fence about LaFleur, and but we want Harbaugh so bad that we're going to let that tip on LaFleur, and we're willing to dump the GM that we were basically guaranteeing we were going to extend, and we're going to pay more money than we ever would for a coach. I don't. Yeah, I mean, I again, obviously, you're just agreeing with me, so I'm not disagreeing with you. But just based on the new reports that came out, it's looking impossible. And maybe that's where the one phone call went. Like, so talk to me about this. And then they got the details and like, okay, good talk, buddy. Best of luck out there. And that was, I'm guessing, the end of that. Now, if nobody meets those demands, then, we'll see. But I'm guessing somebody will because, when you're a guy like that, you write your own ticket and somebody's always willing to overpay and do whatever it takes. Because that's what these owners do, man. They're dreamers. They see that this is going to be the one thing that's going to fix everything, and they'll pay whatever it takes. And usually they're wrong. Occasionally they get it right, but somebody will pay his price tag, and it ain't going to be us. That's all I can say. Well, we got 3 calls from Garrett, so I guess we can make that work. Garrett, what's up?
Hey, Baghdadi, it's Garrett from Southern Illinois.
What's up?
I just wanted to call in to address the recent list of coaches that have been fired, and I know some guys have already speculated that, if the Giants end up hiring Harbaugh, that kind of nullifies the chances of maybe Hafley leaving to go to the Giants since he's from New Jersey, but I still think there's a possibility of him getting hired away from another team, but I have to believe the chances significantly go down. So kind of hoping that he does get to stick around and keep some continuity going with this team. On the other hand, with the other coaches that have been fired, I just found it interesting that going through the list, and I'll try to do it real quick. The first team that we lost to, their coach got fired, Cleveland Browns. The next team that we tied, their defensive coordinator got fired. The next team we lost to, that team is in the playoffs, Carolina Panthers. The next team we lost to, the Eagles, that team is in the playoffs. And, we go on, and we get to losing to the Bears, who, yes, again, that team's going to the playoffs. And preceding that, the Broncos, they're going to the playoffs. Then we lose to 2 teams that won, Baltimore Ravens. They fired their coach. And the Vikings, we lose to them only because we just didn't play our starters. So that one really didn't count. But it's crazy to think 3 of those teams we lost to, those teams fired their coaches. So, it's crazy. The NFL, not for long, really does stand true when it comes to coaches like, surprisingly, Harbaugh. I would not have guessed that they would let someone like that go, but it just goes to show you what have you done for me lately.
Someone is at the front door.
Anyways, it's interesting to see how the coaching carousel will turn out, but I know the last call I made, it was addressing where I thought Malik Willis would go, and now after seeing that Rodgers won that game to propel them into the playoffs, it's not impossible that he comes back to the Steelers. So that one kind of limits that possibility of maybe Malik going to that team, but it sure does seem like maybe other teams like the Las Vegas Raiders would be a good place for him to land, especially if they get a new coach that's offensively, minded. And then you have the Arizona Cardinals, who really didn't have that bad team. They just didn't have a quarterback healthy for most of the season. So, if you put a quarterback with those wide receivers that they got, they might be legit, So, I don't know, just hoping the best for him. So we'll see what happens. But, still.
Part 2, but yeah, a lot is about to unravel here very, very quickly. We're already seeing, John Eric Sullivan gets hired away, and we went from, the Giants being Hafley's only real outlet to he's got 3 interviews lined up, and Eric Sullivan is in Miami, which is a real possibility. Stuff changes real fast. So we will see as things unravel, and again, very, very quickly.
Hey, part 2, Baghdadi. I also wanted to address the Packers' own coaching staff and what you think about who is most likely to be replaced. For consistently through the whole season, the person I have felt most strongly about that they need to find someone new is an offensive lineman coach. I personally don't know too much about Luke Butkus or anything, but ever since, Spinovich has moved up to the OC, I feel like the offensive line quality, as far as how they have performed, has not lived up to Green Bay standards. And their PFF scores have proven that. Their performance, for the most part, I think, has probably been the weak link of this whole entire team this season. So I think that's the number one priority, is get a new offensive lineman coach. Number two is the other obvious one. It's going to be special teams. I think that they should have stuck to their own pattern of letting someone go earlier than holding on to him for too long, and they've held on to Bisaccia for too long. There have been, what I would say, I guess, some consistencies with the kicking game that have been better. I still feel like they mishandled how they covered for McManus when he was hurt. I feel like they rushed him in too soon and probably cost us a game, therefore. But I still feel like their performance as far as kick coverage and kickoffs and punt returns and not finding a
Freaking
dedicated
penalties.
punt returner, kick returner, just seems to be enough that they need to bring in somebody new and prioritize it just a little bit more. So those are the two guys I feel like are the obvious choices. I don't know if you got any other ones you feel like you want to address, but those are the two that I feel like they really do need to make a change.
Well, those would be my two also. I think we've already, covered that. But the more interesting question is less about what would I like them to do and more about what do I think that they would do. And I don't know their opinion. They're never going to give you their honest opinion. They're always going to defend their guys, which always makes me nervous because, they'll ask about Bisaccia. Oh, I think he's done a great job. And I don't know if that's true or not. Sometimes it is, and they really believe it. And they're like, you don't know what you're talking about. You're crazy. He's a great coach. And other times they're kind of blowing smoke, but I don't know. The only thing I would say to Packer fans is, just so we're clear, if and when they fire Bisaccia, don't think for 1 second they're not going to think, well, that was stupid, us deciding to spend all that money on a special teams coordinator. We should have stuck to our gut and not done that. In other words, don't expect them to turn around and then drop a massive pile of cash on the next up-and-coming special teams coordinator. Because they just did that with Bisaccia, and it did, not up-and-coming, but, the big name, the big hire or whatever, that everybody said, you got to go get him. You can't let this fail. You can't let this guy go. He's great. Which he never was, but, the fans were all buzzing about him. I don't expect that that's going to happen. I don't know that anybody cares as long as Bisaccia is gone, but I'm just throwing that out there. I wouldn't hold our breath on them dropping a frickin' Brinks truck in the middle of some special teams coach's front yard.
Okay, final observation regarding coaches and previous performances. It was just a couple years ago that when Dallas was having that real big surge in interceptions, and I know very well from your point of view and your opinion on interceptions are fleeting. Last year we saw really good performance by McKinney, and now teams are really not really throwing in this direction. But it does seem like this year I'd love to know how many interceptions he's dropped that were, a turnover-worthy play that he has not come down with. I'm really curious how many times that's happened. But to get to my point, I was kind of in favor of bringing someone in like Al Harris, who was the defensive back coach for Dallas when they saw that surge. And lo and behold, Al Harris is on the defensive side of the coaches for Chicago now, and look at who's leading the league in interceptions.
Yeah, but you know what I'm going to say about that. You already basically answered it. Jeff Hafley came in here, and he was the great wizard that caused us to be the best team in turnovers with McKinney and all this other stuff, until we weren't, and we became the worst team in it. So Al Harris is some kind of a wizard that forces people to, which, by the way, did they do that in Dallas? Maybe. I know the one guy that Diggs, who's on our team, he was his coach for a year. But, next year when the Bears are not doing this, what is our opinion of Al Harris going to be? I don't know. I don't know. And the first step of an interception is a ball has to come floating in front of your face, right? That's what's been happening to the Bears a lot. We can't pretend like they've been doing the whole, elite, like frickin' Charles Woodson, like baiting quarterbacks thing. They're not doing that. Balls are floating by their face and they're grabbing them. I don't think Al Harris is manufacturing that. Doesn't mean he's a bad coach and that we shouldn't have went out and got. I know Packer fans wanted him because we like Al Harris because he's a former Packer and all that, but yeah, I don't think, I don't want to say I know, but I'm very close to knowing that this is not going to be maintained because in the history of football, it's never been a thing that just lasts forever. Probably by next year, this number is going to go down and we're not going to care who their DB coach is or whatever his title is.
Say that it's kind of fluky, but he has been on both teams that have seen a pretty big spike in interceptions, and I really wish we could have brought him in because there's something to that, I think, Ryan. I know as much as you could probably prove me wrong statistically, but there's something to be said about a guy that is on your coaching staff that had success himself as an NFL player when it comes to interceptions. And he did it with Dallas, and now he's doing it with Chicago. So just kind of curious, like, man, I feel like we did miss it on him, bringing him in. But I could be wrong, but it just optically, it looked like it would have been a good decision to bring him in. So I'd love to hear your opinion on it. I'm out.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant until it's not. Again, Hafley, I mean, it was, why were we getting all the interceptions? Because Hafley drilled it. They did all the drills. They did all the things. They prioritized, take the ball away. So it made sense. That's it. That's that simple. We got a guy who emphasizes takeaways, and now we get takeaways. Okay, why are we not getting it now? Well, I don't know. No idea. Did we stop emphasizing it? Did we stop coaching it? Do we not have Hafley anymore? What changed? Nothing changed. We just were good at it, and now we're not good at it anymore. So, should we have gotten Al Harris because maybe there would have been some fluky spike in picks, which, by the way, we had that exact same spike when Hafley got here. Should we have brought him in to sustain that or extend our fluky spike for one more year? But yeah, if we draw a very squiggly line between the 2021 Dallas Cowboys and the 2025 Chicago Bears, then yeah, you can kind of make that comparison. But the year prior to 2021 and 2020, when Al Harris was there, his first year, they were 23rd in interceptions. From 2021 to 2022, they already dropped to 7th, so from 1st to 7th. And then from 7th to 8th, and then from 8th to 12th. And then he goes to Chicago, and they're number 1. Is that Al Harris? I don't know. In the, what are we talking about, 5 years? Twice he was on the number 1 team. Could it be Al Harris magic? I don't know. I find it very unlikely. I don't know what Al Harris could possibly do, and whatever it is he does, why didn't he do it the other 4 years? It's actually a 6-year span. He did it twice, 4 years. Not that they were bad. They were never bad. I'm just saying, I think Packer fans wanted Al Harris. Chicago now is good, and so now it's just, I'm upset because I feel like if we had him, we'd have the same success. And again, maybe because it might have been kind of like a fake hypey thing that caused us, or in this case, McKinney basically entirely, to have like really high interceptions for like a half a year, and then that went away. And maybe this is the same fake hypey thing that has people, I don't know, but again, if you watch the interceptions, they're very clearly, most of them, lucky interceptions. I mean, the ball gets tipped and it, there it goes, flopping over to somebody else who catches it. Are they just more lucky? Are they getting more tips because they get their hands up more, which you can't really say is an Al Harris thing because he's the DB coach, and a lot of times it's linebackers and defensive linemen and stuff that are tipping balls, and also defensive linemen, linebackers catching the balls. I don't know. Plus, it's a terrible defense. I mean, it's just, they're not good. Aside from the interceptions, even with the interceptions, they're still a terrible defense. So I think it would have been interesting to have Al Harris back in the room. I think it could have been kind of cool, but I don't know that he's really turned them into a powerhouse defense in any kind of way. Just my thought. All right, I'm going to get out of here. I hope to see you all at game time during the live stream. Otherwise, I will talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.